Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm ffinlo Costain. The UK's Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs is consulting on proposals for mandatory method of production labelling for some meat products sold in Britain. I spoke to Peter Stevenson and Catherine Jadav from Compassion and World Farming, which has campaigned for mandatory farm system labelling. I started by asking Catherine exactly what the government is proposing.
It's proposing to put a label on meat, much like we have with eggs, that tells us how the animals were kept. So with eggs, we have, it's compulsory for the eggs to say whether they're from caged hens or barn or free range or organic, but we don't have that with meat products or dairy.
Will this be for all meat products?
Initially, they're going to start with chicken and pork products, so bacon, ham, sausages. And then they're going to look at rolling it out to other meat products as well, and to dairy.
Why is method of production labelling necessary in the first place?
The method of production gives consumers obviously a clear idea of how the animals have lived, how they're raised. It's a very good indicator of the welfare that the animals have enjoyed. So it will tell consumers, has this animal spent the whole of its life indoors in very cramped, barren conditions, or has it alternatively been indoors but in rather good conditions? And best of all, has this animal been kept and lived free range outdoors?
It's important because we know that people want to know how the animals were kept. For example, a poll done last year found that over 80% of people thought that there should be labelling on meat products to say how the animals have been kept.
Now, of course, customers often say that they'll pay more for products from higher welfare farm system, but what's the evidence that they'll actually pay more?
Interestingly, when it became law that eggs had to be labelled according to how the hens had been kept, the proportion of eggs being sold that were from cage-free hens has just gradually increased quite dramatically. So it's gone from around 30% of eggs being sold that were from cage-free hens up to nearly 80% today.
In the case of eggs, for 20 years now, EU law, which is still applying here in the UK, requires egg packs to be labelled as the farming method. The pack's got to say eggs from caged hens, barn eggs, free range or organic. And that labelling has led to a huge shift away from cage eggs to free range, even though they cost more. Now, not all consumers are going to be willing to pay more or even able to pay more, but a pretty large chunk will pay more if they're told how the animal has been raised.
And why is the mandatory element important rather than, for example, voluntary labelling? And are there examples of this sort of labelling already in place in the UK or the rest of Europe apart from on eggs?
No, it's only with eggs that we have mandatory labelling. And the point about mandatory is that it means that not just the good eggs or meat have to be labelled, free range, organic, whatever, but the bog standard factory farmed meat, eggs, milk have to be labelled as such. And that means from the consumer, when they pick up a pack saying eggs from caged hens or the equivalent that we hopefully now going to get for pork and meat, chickens, they look at this and think, no, I don't feel comfortable about this. I'm going to go to something better. So the mandatory is absolutely crucial.
So the mandatory bit is really key, because if it's not mandatory, then we're in the same situation that we currently are, where we can choose to put a label on. And of course, those farmers that are producing to higher standards and giving their animals outdoor access, so free range or organic, they will put the label on. But the animals that are being produced to the intensive low welfare standards aren't going to say on the label indoor.
Why is it, do you think, that the government is starting with chicken and pork and not just moving ahead with all meat products?
In fairness to Defra, I think they're taking this step by step, and the big problem areas are with pigs, chickens and other poultry. These are the creatures that are, most commonly factory farms. So it's a good starting point. We need to quickly, though, move over to dairy, to milk, butter, cheese. It's a huge problem area for consumers. Governments rightly say consumers have to play their part in driving welfare improvements. But so far, apart from with eggs, consumers are, to a large degree, kept in the dark, particularly with dairy. When you pick up milk, butter or cheese in the supermarket, unless you can afford organic, you don't know whether this is coming from cows that have been kept outdoors on pasture in the grass growing season, or from very intensive zero grazed herds. So Defra, yes, moved pretty quickly over to dairy as well.
We do already have voluntary labelling by Farm System for pork products, so outdoor bred, outdoor reared. What difference do you think a mandatory label will make here?
What it's going to do, remember the outdoor bred and reared with pigs, it's only a small proportion of the overall pig sector. What the mandatory label will do is firstly tell consumers when the pig that's produced this meat has been reared intensively indoors. It will also, Defra's got about 5 different grades. And it will allow those farmers who are doing quite a lot to help, for example, not using farrowing crates, but are still an indoor system, to show that they are doing something better than the bog standard factory farmed, even though they've not actually gone free range. And I think that's really important.
How would you expect this to affect the marketplace?
I think this is really going to benefit those farmers who already are or wanting to move to higher welfare systems. It will allow them to show that they are farming to a good method of production. It means that those farmers who are still using bog standard factory farming will be distinguished in the marketplace. And, when you link this with the fact that Defra is moving our subsidies over to rewarding for, amongst other things, high welfare, this could really be a game changer, because the farmer will both be getting some government subsidies support for higher welfare, and hopefully getting a better margin in the marketplace, because consumers will be moving over to these higher welfare products.
That was Catherine Jadav and Peter Stevenson from Compassion in World Farming. More news on our website 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.